Zara stood in the crowded, sterile lobby of one of Seoul's top tech firms, her palms sweating from the anticipation of the interview. She looked down at her modest outfit, a hand-me-down dress from her aunt, and tugged at the edges, hoping it looked presentable enough. The lobby was bustling with other candidates, all sharply dressed, polished, and prepared. It was her first real shot at a corporate job in Korea, a dream she had chased since moving from Nigeria. She had just finished checking her phone for the 100th time when she heard a voice from behind her. "Excuse me, young lady. You're in my way." Zara turned around sharply. The man who stood behind her was old, his white hair a stark contrast against his well-tailored suit. His eyes were cold, and his voice was laced with impatience. She blinked in confusion. "Sorry, but you're cutting the line." "You need to wait your turn," she responded, trying to keep her voice steady, but irritation seeped in. Her own nerves were getting the best of her. The old man stared at her for a moment, a chuckle escaping his lips. "You think you can tell me what to do?" He smirked, clearly amused by her boldness. Zara's face flushed. She wasn't used to people challenging her, especially not like this. She took a deep breath and stood her ground. "Look, I'm just following the rules," Zara shot back. "If you want to get in line, we can both wait our turn. Simple." He narrowed his eyes at her, clearly not expecting her to stand up to him. "You think just because you're young, you can speak to me like this? I've seen more of life than you'll ever know." Zara clenched her fists. She was tired of always being the one to follow the rules while others got ahead because of their age, their status, or their privilege. She opened her mouth to retort, but before she could, a young woman at the front desk called out, "Mr. Park, your interview is ready." Zara watched as the old man, Mr. Park, walked past her without a second glance. Her heart pounded in her chest. Who was this man that thought he could do whatever he wanted? As he walked away, Zara couldn't help but wonder if this would be the moment she'd regret, standing up to an old man who probably had more power than she could ever imagine. But she couldn't let it go. Not when everything she had fought for was on the line. Minutes later, the receptionist called Zara's name. She stepped forward with shaky legs, trying to calm the storm inside her. But the tension still lingered. The only thing that filled her mind was the image of Mr. Park's mocking smile. Inside the interview room, Zara tried to push aside the encounter with Mr. Park, focusing on the task at hand. She was here to get this job, nothing else mattered. The room was pristine, the walls decorated with minimalist art. The chair she sat in felt cold against her skin, and her nervousness was palpable. "Miss Zara, it's a pleasure to meet you," the interviewer said, her voice smooth and professional. "Tell me about yourself." Zara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm from Nigeria, and I moved here a few years ago to pursue a career in tech. I have experience working in project management and customer relations." The interviewer nodded, but Zara could feel her eyes flicker over the resume she had submitted. She knew what was coming next, questions about her qualifications, her background, her ability to fit into the culture of the company. She had prepared herself for this, but the weight of Mr. Park's earlier words lingered in her thoughts. "I see," the interviewer said after a pause. "You know, Korea is quite different from Nigeria. We value hierarchy and respect for age here. How do you feel about that?" Zara's heart raced. "I'm open to learning and adapting," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I understand the importance of respect in any culture, but I also believe that respect is earned through actions, not just age." The interviewer raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by Zara's boldness. "Interesting," she said. "Let's talk about your qualifications then." Just as Zara began to relax, the door to the interview room opened. An older man walked in, Mr. Park. He was the CEO of the company, and the realization hit Zara like a ton of bricks. Her heart skipped a beat as he walked past her, his eyes locking onto hers for a brief moment. His expression was unreadable. "Sorry I'm late," Mr. Park said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "I hope I didn't interrupt." Zara's breath caught in her throat. This was the same man she had argued with moments earlier. The same man she had challenged. The same man who had just walked into the room like it was nothing. The interviewer turned to Zara, her face expressionless. "Miss Zara, this is Mr. Park, our CEO." Zara swallowed hard, her mind racing. Was this some sort of test? Had Mr. Park been testing her all along? Her nerves were now in overdrive, and her earlier bravado seemed to evaporate in an instant. Mr. Park's gaze lingered on her for a moment before he offered her a polite smile. "It's good to meet you," he said, his tone much softer than before. Zara could feel her stomach churn. The old man she had stood up to was now in a position of power, and she couldn't help but wonder if she had just ruined her chance at the job. But Mr. Park's eyes softened, and he said something that caught her off guard. "You have courage," he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. "Not many people are brave enough to speak up when they should." Zara felt a wave of confusion wash over her. What was he saying? Was he testing her again? Was she even going to get this job? The questions flooded her mind as she tried to hold on to her composure. Zara's thoughts raced as she sat in the sterile interview room, feeling the weight of Mr. Park's words still hanging in the air. Her heart thudded in her chest, and she couldn't help but replay the earlier incident in her head. The argument. The shock of realizing who he truly was. And now, here she was, in the same room as the man she had so boldly confronted. She had always prided herself on being able to stand up for herself, but now, in the presence of Mr. Park, her confidence wavered. Her words, once so clear and firm, felt insignificant in this moment. Was she foolish to have challenged him? Was she wasting her time? But then she remembered why she was here, to prove to herself and everyone else that she belonged in this world. She had worked too hard, come too far, to let fear take over. She couldn't afford to let one mistake define her future. The CEO continued to sit across from her, quietly observing, as if waiting for her to gather her thoughts. Zara couldn't meet his gaze for too long. His presence, though silent, felt all-encompassing. Her palms began to sweat again as she fidgeted in her seat. "Miss Zara," the interviewer spoke again, her voice steady but now tinged with curiosity, "tell me about a time when you faced a challenge that tested your character." Zara took a deep breath and tried to steady her nerves. She thought about her life in Nigeria, the constant battle to survive, to push through the poverty, the judgment, and the discrimination. She thought about the sacrifices her family made for her to be here in Korea, to pursue something bigger than what her circumstances would allow. The challenge she faced wasn't just external, it was internal, a constant battle to prove that she was worthy of everything she dreamed of. She leaned forward slightly, her voice firm now. "I grew up in a small village in Nigeria, where resources were scarce. I worked hard to support my family, doing whatever it took, sometimes taking on multiple jobs at once. But the real challenge was not just surviving, but trying to find a way out of the cycle of poverty. I had to push myself beyond what I thought was possible. I faced rejection from people who thought I didn't belong, but I didn't let that stop me. I kept moving forward because I knew there had to be something better ahead." The interviewer nodded, her expression neutral, but Zara noticed the slight glimmer of respect in her eyes. She took this as a sign that her words had hit the mark. For a moment, Zara felt a flicker of hope. She had spoken from the heart, something she had always believed in, being true to herself, no matter the situation. The door opened slightly, and Mr. Park's gaze shifted towards the entrance. His sharp eyes, though kind, seemed to take everything in at once. He had the air of someone who had seen it all, someone who had faced far more difficult challenges than Zara could ever imagine. "Miss Zara," Mr. Park finally spoke, his voice calm and measured, you've had a difficult journey, and I admire your resilience. But the question remains, do you believe that your courage will be enough to navigate the complexities of this job? Zara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. This was no longer just about her skills or qualifications, it was about something deeper. Her character, her ability to face adversity head-on, to fit into a world that seemed foreign to her. She wasn't just trying to land this job for herself, she was trying to prove to everyone who had doubted her, back home and here, that she could make it. Yes, she replied with conviction, her voice unwavering, I believe I have what it takes. I've fought too hard and come too far to give up now. I will adapt, I will learn, and I will succeed. I won't let anything or anyone stop me. Mr. Park studied her for a moment, his eyes unreadable. He then nodded slowly, as though seeing something in her that he hadn't expected. Zara didn't know what to make of it, but she could feel something shifting in the room. This wasn't just an interview anymore, it had become a test of who she was at her core. The tension in the air thickened as the interview continued, but Zara's focus remained steady. She didn't know what would happen next, but she was no longer afraid. She had already won the battle against herself. Zara stepped out of the interview room, her legs feeling like they might give way beneath her. The words she had just spoken felt like a declaration of war against her deepest fears, and now that they were out in the open, she wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or terrified. Her head spun with 1,000 thoughts, most of them revolving around Mr. Park, his surprising words, the way his eyes had studied her, and the weight of his gaze that seemed to pierce right through her. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a job interview. Something about the way he'd looked at her, almost as if he saw something in her that others didn't, had left her unsettled. As Zara made her way back to the lobby, she tried to calm her mind, but it wasn't working. She couldn't stop thinking about the argument with Mr. Park, or the strange way their paths had crossed. Was this some kind of test? Had she passed or failed? She had no way of knowing. All she could do was wait. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to find a message from her younger sister back in Nigeria. Asterisk, how did it go? Was it better than the last one? Asterisk. Zara's fingers trembled as she typed her response. Asterisk, I think it went well, but I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know when I hear back. Asterisk. The truth was, Zara didn't know what to feel. She had spent the last few weeks preparing for this moment, meticulously rehearsing her answers, mentally bracing herself for questions she might not have answers to. But in the end, the hardest part had been dealing with her own insecurities. How could she fit into a world so different from her own? Could she ever truly belong? She sank into one of the chairs in the lobby, waiting for her phone to buzz again with a call from the company. The minutes ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last. She was beginning to feel like the walls of the lobby were closing in on her when the receptionist called her name. Ms. Zara, Mr. Park would like to speak with you. Her heart skipped a beat. Mr. Park? She stood up quickly, trying to compose herself. Was this it? Had she messed things up beyond repair? The receptionist guided her through a set of glass doors to a small, private office at the back of the building. The door opened, and Mr. Park stood by a large window, looking out over the city. His profile was sharp, his expression unreadable. You wanted to speak with me, sir? Zara asked, her voice a little shakier than she intended. Mr. Park turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers. Please, have a seat, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His tone was calm, almost distant, but there was a hint of something else beneath it, something Zara couldn't quite place. She sat down, feeling the tension return to her shoulders as she folded her hands in her lap. I've been thinking about our conversation earlier, Mr. Park began, his voice low. And I believe you may have misunderstood something. Zara's heart sank. Misunderstood? What did he mean? Had he been testing her all along? About the argument earlier, he continued, his eyes studying her intently. You were right. I should have waited my turn. But you stood your ground. That's rare, especially in this country. Zara blinked in surprise. You're not angry? Mr. Park smiled, but there was no humor in it. No, I'm not angry. In fact, I'm impressed. But what I want you to understand is that respect is not just about following the rules, it's about understanding when to challenge them. Zara's mind raced. She had expected him to criticize her for her boldness, not praise her for it. But what was he really trying to say? Was there a hidden message behind his words? You've been through a lot to get here, haven't you? Mr. Park asked, his voice softer now. I can see it in you. The way you carry yourself. You've had to fight for everything you have, haven't you? Zara nodded, her throat tight. She hadn't expected this level of understanding from him. Most people, especially in Korea, didn't seem to care about where she came from or what she had gone through. But Mr. Park, despite the cultural gap, despite the apparent wealth and power he held, seemed to see her. He continued, I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong, Zara. To feel like you're an outsider in a world that doesn't understand you. But that's why I believe you have the potential to be part of something bigger. Something that doesn't just rely on tradition and hierarchy, but values individuality and courage. You've shown me that. Zara's breath caught in her chest. She wasn't sure what he meant by all of this, but there was something in his words that made her feel seen, in a way that no one else had. Maybe she was more than just the girl who had been forced to fit in, to adapt, to shrink herself into a box that others had defined for her. Maybe she was someone who could carve her own path. But it's not going to be easy, Mr. Park added, his tone shifting slightly. You will face challenges here. There will be times when you're pushed to the edge, when you feel like you don't belong. But you have something many of the others here don't, resilience. Zara felt a swell of emotion rise in her chest. She didn't know if this was the answer she had been waiting for, or if this was simply another test. But in this moment, it didn't matter. She had fought to get here, and she was going to keep fighting. Thank you, she whispered, barely able to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. Mr. Park smiled at her, a rare, genuine smile that seemed to light up his face. You'll do well, Zara. You'll do very well. Zara stood up, her legs feeling like jelly beneath her. As she made her way toward the door, she turned to glance at him one last time. He was already back at his desk, his back to her, but there was something different now. Something had shifted between them, an unspoken understanding, a connection born from shared struggles. She stepped out of the office and into the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for sure, this moment would change everything. Zara stepped out of the building and into the crisp Seoul air, her heart still racing from her encounter with Mr. Park. The interview had been a whirlwind of emotions, disappointment, surprise, and, for the first time in a long while, hope. As she walked down the street, the city around her felt different. It was as if the concrete jungle that had once felt so foreign, so cold, now held the possibility of becoming home. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this uncertain yet this hopeful all at once. The nagging questions about her future, about whether she truly belonged here, still swirled in her mind, but there was something else too, a quiet sense of pride. She had stood up for herself, not just in the interview but in her life. The fight she had waged against her own insecurities, her past, and even her culture had led her here. And though the road ahead was unclear, for the first time, Zara didn't feel alone. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, interrupting her thoughts. It was another message from her sister in Nigeria. Asterisk, sis, we're praying for you. I know you'll make us proud. You've always been strong. Don't forget that. Asterisk. Zara smiled softly, wiping away the stray tear that had fallen down her cheek. Her family, her roots, were what had kept her going all this time. Her mother, her father, her siblings, they had all sacrificed so much to give her this opportunity. She couldn't afford to fail them. Not now, not ever. She arrived at her small apartment after a short bus ride, her mind still replaying the interview. Mr. Park's words echoed in her mind, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if she should be grateful or wary. Was he truly impressed by her, or was he just trying to placate her? She wasn't naive enough to think that the world didn't work in mysterious ways. She knew how things worked in Korea. The rich, the powerful, they controlled everything. But something about Mr. Park's demeanor, his understanding, made her believe that maybe he saw something in her that others didn't. That night, as she lay in bed, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from the company. She opened it with trembling fingers, and her breath caught in her throat as she read the subject line. Congratulations, Ms. Zara. You've been selected for the final round of interviews, A sense of disbelief washed over her. She had made it. She had done it. But even as joy surged within her, a wave of anxiety followed. The final interview was the ultimate test. The last barrier. She would have to prove herself all over again. The stakes were higher now, and failure seemed even more dangerous. The next day, Zara decided to take a walk to clear her mind. She knew she had to prepare for the final interview, but the weight of her family's expectations, her dreams, and the pressures of fitting into a culture so different from her own weighed heavily on her. She found herself in a small park near her apartment, sitting on a bench and watching the people around her. They all seemed so confident, so sure of themselves, and Zara couldn't help but feel like an outsider. She wasn't like them. She wasn't born into privilege. She had fought for every opportunity she had. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. This time, it was a message from Mr. Park. She stared at the screen, unsure if she should open it. It wasn't the first time he had contacted her since the interview, but this message felt different. It was brief but direct. I've been thinking about your interview, Ms. Zara. I want to offer you a piece of advice. This is your chance to show the world who you really are. Don't try to fit in. Stand out. I'll see you at the final interview. Her heart skipped a beat. Stand out? Was that the key to succeeding? Zara had always believed that fitting in was the only way to survive. But maybe Mr. Park was right. Maybe she had spent too much of her life trying to blend in, trying to be what others wanted her to be. The thought hit her like a ton of bricks. She had always held herself back, believing that she wasn't good enough because she didn't fit the mold. But now, here she was, on the verge of something bigger than she had ever dreamed of. She couldn't let her fear hold her back any longer. She couldn't let anyone or anything define who she was. Zara spent the rest of the day reflecting, gathering the strength to approach the final interview with confidence. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but nothing in her life had ever been easy. She had come too far to give up now. As the evening drew to a close, she felt more determined than ever. The final interview was scheduled for the following day. Zara dressed in the best clothes she had, a professional but simple outfit that didn't feel like she was trying too hard to fit into the corporate world. She chose not to overthink it. She had learned her lesson. She wasn't going to pretend to be someone she wasn't. When she arrived at the office, the atmosphere felt different. There was a buzz of anticipation in the air, and Zara couldn't help but feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She was the only one who looked out of place, the only one who wasn't a part of the same elite circle. But she stood tall. Her posture was firm, her eyes steady. She knew her worth, and today, she was going to show it. The final interview was more intense than the first, but it wasn't the questions that rattled her. It was the power dynamics at play, the subtle ways the interviewers tried to intimidate her, the judgment in their eyes. They looked at her as though she didn't belong. But Zara didn't back down. She answered each question with conviction, drawing from her life experiences and her unshakable belief in herself. And when the interview finally ended, Zara felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had been true to herself, and in doing so, she had proven something to herself that she hadn't even realized she needed to prove, that she was capable of standing tall, no matter where she came from, no matter who tried to put her down. She left the office that day, her heart filled with a sense of calm. She had done all she could, and now, it was in the hands of fate. As she walked down the bustling streets of Seoul, she felt something shift within her, something powerful. It wasn't about fitting in anymore. It was about standing out. The next few days were a blur. Zara went through the motions of her daily life, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to happen. She kept playing over the final interview in her mind, replaying the questions and her answers, the subtle glances, the way she had held her own in a room full of people who didn't understand her. Then, one evening, as she sat in her small apartment, her phone buzzed again. She hesitated before picking it up, the anticipation nearly overwhelming. When she opened the message, her heart skipped a beat. Congratulations, Miss Zara. You've been selected for the position. Her breath caught in her throat. She had done it. She had finally made it. But more than that, she had proven something even more important. She had proven that no matter where you came from, no matter what challenges you faced, you could rise above it all. Zara had stood up for herself, for her dreams, and for her future. And now, the world was hers to conquer.